variety of other things. But it's just going to have to be a wait and see for me, RJ.
So who stands to actually, benefit from Arkansas playing Texas?
It's a good question. So Arkansas fans, RJ, have this inferiority complex when it comes to Texas. They hate that school. Not necessarily the state. Now, there's, I want to say 60% of Arkansas students are from the state of Texas. It seems like all my friends either live in Dallas or from the Dallas area. It's wild how many Razorback alums make their way to Dallas, Texas. And so you have a lot of mixing and matching on campus, and that translates to people staying in Arkansas, saying it's a beautiful state, it's a beautiful place to grow up, and I've really enjoyed being here for quite some time. Texas has less to gain than Arkansas has to gain when it comes to this game this fall in Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium, and that's one of the reasons, RJ, that this game is not scheduled every single year. I know that Texas Athletic Director Chris Delaconte said that they want to compete against teams in non-conference that would put them in national championship contention. Well, let's hold the phones, Chris, because you guys have not been anywhere near that.
Hold on. His point is valid, though. They've been closer than Arkansas.
Listen, you're 100% right. And since it hasn't, not a lot of good things have happened since 2011 for Arkansas football. I know you're a big Sam Pittman fan, so hopefully things will go in the right direction. But that's why this game hasn't been scheduled again. The only reason it's being played this upcoming season is because it was supposed to be played. Let's see, that would have been supposed to be played in 2009, but it got pushed back and then it got pushed back again. That's why it's not going to continue to be played after this season unless just something crazy happens.
Well, I mean, that happened with Oklahoma and LSU, right? LSU opted to put Texas on the schedule. That ended up being great for them, right? Because they got tested. They got a W. People respect Texas even when they shouldn't. And they rode that to 15-0 in a national championship. But the reason I ask who stands to benefit from that game is both of y'all stand to benefit from that game. Because as you just mentioned, there's a lot of Arkansans that live in Texas, right? And there's a lot of Texans that will find their way to Arkansas. I submit to the idea of game theory, one, because it's easy for me to make an analogy because people saw A Beautiful Mind, but also math, right? When you're more inclusive, when you have more people at the table, everybody makes more money. That's a fact. That's why diversity and inclusion should be an economic argument as opposed to a moral argument, right? You're going to make more. I think with Arkansas and Arkansas State, you have an opportunity to keep more money in the state, as you mentioned, but also you have an opportunity to grow Arkansas State into a formidable force for Arkansas. Like if that game was Texas A&M, and Texas A&M were good, everybody would look forward to that game, and it would be nationally marked on the calendar. But this idea of holding what you got, I also think harkens back to a day that is separate but equal, right? Because like Arkansas, we got what we got. Arkansas State, y'all got what y'all got. We don't want to mix. We don't want to intermingle. That's bad. And we got lots of data to show that that's not. Like I told you, like when we were talking about this in text, that you asked me, what do I think? And I went to write down my thoughts, and I wrote down like 1,500 words, and obviously I get all the way into separate but equal, right? So like that was why I wanted to talk with you about this, and Ty was the trooper, dude. He's like, yeah, let's go. But I don't understand, at least in this day and age where we have all this data, why Arkansas feels a need to protect something, especially at a time when you want people watching Arkansas football, right? Like the idea that Coach Broyles was walking out there. Frank, y'all won one national championship. One. And it ain't won none since, okay? You need people watching Arkansas football. And if that means bringing in another team that you know is going to get watched by your locals, why not, dog? Like, why? I can't get past that. I can't get past this idea that you're limiting yourself by saying we're just not going to like he did this with Tulsa. Like you brought up the OU Tulsa analogy, and I think that comparison is actually really good. I would put it this way: Coach Broyles is also the person that said Arkansas is never going to travel to Tulsa, right? Is this real class place of we're only going to travel to teams that we think we're equal with or better than us, right? We're not actually going to, like, we talk about this. How Arkansas graduates live in Tulsa, right? Like I can do, yeah, right.
Good chunk.
Just a tremendous chunk.
Including my my stepsister and brother-in-law that I was supposed to go see this weekend and see the nephew hoop this weekend, RJ.
Oh man, and like you and I were supposed to be having lunch in December. Like all of that got thrown out the window. But no, that's my point, right? When you want an opportunity to get those home and homes and to know that nobody's dodging competition, but it's also part of like, and I want to take this out of Arkansas. I don't want to put this in front of just Coach Broyles, though he is the front of it. Around the country, people are scared, right? I want a playoff to be expanded because I don't want anybody to be able to run from anybody else, right? I love the idea of an undefeated group of 5 team showing up to Alabama to get housed because I want them to have the chance to prove they're not as good, right? I come from the state of, no, I'm a group of 5 program. Like, the idea that I was going to be at Fox never crossed my mind, period. I was a little guy who wanted to talk about college football and talk about it incessantly. And the idea that there are no more little guys or that's just a one-off really doesn't make me feel good, right? I think that an egalitarian form of, hey, are you good? Cool. Then we're going to give you our attention. If you're bad, cool. You get weeded out. Why is that idea not front and center at Arkansas?
I think one of the things that worries some people, and I don't know how many it is you brought up again the Oklahoma State comparison and Arkansas, Texas. I think there's some people in the back of their head, and I don't know how valid of a reasoning this is that Arkansas State could eventually become a good program. And what happens if they start nabbing a kid or two inside of Arkansas that the Razorbacks wanted and offered and weren't able to get? Now, there was, I want to say the recruiting, we have on Richard Davenport every single week, RJ, and of all the years that he's been covering recruiting, he could only recall one player that chose Arkansas State over Arkansas. I want to say it was the running back out of Osceola. And I don't know if this could actually happen, but if Arkansas State did win the football game in 2025, and I don't know where the Arkansas football program, what it's going to be looking like, and now, then you just put in the back of a kid's head who was 100% going to Arkansas. Maybe Arkansas State has something going on. Arkansas, RJ, is the worst, least fertile recruiting ground in the Southeastern Conference. They do not, like Little Rock, for as many great basketball players come out of Little Rock has to improve its high school football. And it's getting better. There's certain coaches that are down there, they're starting to put more football influence in high schools and renovate facilities and stuff like that. But even like if Oklahoma loses a kid to Oklahoma State, I don't know who would go to Tulsa over Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Let's say it happened. It's not that big of a deal. Oklahoma's a national brand. They can get guys like Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama. They have that type of superiority. Arkansas doesn't have that. And so when you're recruiting in-state in Arkansas, you have to have every advantage. And you mentioned Broyles back in the day, and you mentioned the national championship in '64. They got close in '65. They should beat Texas in '69. 78 beat Oklahoma in the Orange. They had other years where they were really close by a game or two, and they just fell short. Arkansas, I know it's hard for a lot of your listeners and watchers to grasp, was a blue blood in college football. Now that died away. At some point in the '80s, I'd say, maybe late '80s. They won 2 Southwest Conference championships before they ventured off to the SEC. And that mentality, that mindset used to be okay because Arkansas could say that. They were in the same breath as a Texas or USC or some of the other blue bloods that we know today, even though those two individually have been where they were. I don't necessarily – I can't rip Broyles for that because even Ken Hatfield said that, like, what does Arkansas have to Lake – not the Lake Ken Hatfield, geez. Ken Hatfield is very much still alive. We had him on the show a couple months ago. He said Arkansas just doesn't – and that's where I come to. And you mentioned the everyone benefits. Arkansas State and the state and the fans and a lot of them benefit. I can't picture and fathom this Arkansas football program and athletics benefiting a lot by playing Arkansas State. Hey, man, I've been wrong before. Maybe it goes good for Arkansas. It's big, and it helps this football program. It helps high school football. I just don't see it, man. And again, I'm not going to rip Hunter Yurchek for making this decision. He's made a lot of great decisions in his early short tenure as the AD in Arkansas. That's just kind of where I am right now.
Well, and I get not wanting to lose market share. I understand that argument at the highest level. To the idea that you're going to lose recruits to Arkansas State, I would say Arkansas State needs to prove that they're good first, and beating a good Arkansas is not the same as beating a mediocre Arkansas. And I use mediocre in a positive sense for once, as opposed to being bad, because last year I'd say they were pushing to good. They ended up mediocre, right? I mean, that Auburn game goes differently. We're probably talking about that season a little bit differently, but you mentioned about 4 other instances where if they get a game, we're talking about them being national champs versus just having a really great season. So I want to make that distinction. I also want to just drive home this idea that Arkansas is still the flagship program in the state, which means they're getting the most money from the state, right? Not to say nothing of what the Waltons do with their money. Right? Like that's, you're always going to be able to outspend in a state. But I also think that you're getting to a point to where you're going to push people away if you don't start inviting them in. And I think Hunter Yurchek saw that. And the reason I say that, the year after next, Central Arkansas is a Sun Belt team. Okay? That means you got 2 FBS good football teams in your state. And my favorite part of this, the Sun Belt might be the 6th or even 5th best conference in the country, depending on who you want to talk to at any given time, right? So Central Arkansas is also going to be there. In the same way that Oklahoma State and Tulsa are there for Oklahoma. But Oklahoma was trash in the 90s. Well, I'd say 93 to basically 99, right? Just awful. Tulsa could come in there, do something, right? Oklahoma State could come in there, do something. And yet you bounce back because you're the flagship university. I hope that more Arkansas fans come around to the idea of, no, we want to be on the good side of this history when these teams do pop up and become pretty good. Because I like the Red Wolves. I like the Bears. I like what they're about. I like the Wonder Boys. Hell, like, look at me. I'm a natural Arkansas fan.
Oh, man. I want to say something real quick.
Please.
Brought up with Hunter Yurchek, I think we need to talk about his background a little bit. Coastal Carolina, Houston, 2 of the smaller schools inside of Carolina, and then Texas. And he has that background of being a group of 5 AD, which is what Terry Mohajir was, is now at UCF before taking that job.
Danny White.
So he has that in his background, which I think is important when it came to this discussion and how it transpired, RJ.
No, and that's a very good point, and I'm glad you raised it. And I say that there are more Group of 5 people than there are Power 5 people. We all pick Power 5 teams because they're on television or we were raised in those houses, right? Like if Tulsa was on television as much as Oklahoma, I would ask the question, which team do you care about more, right? Because exposure is as big as anything else, and the exposure being on with Arkansas, say, the local affiliate, but even the SEC network, a cable television network, is tremendous. I got you here, so I'm going to ask you,